What is dispatching? The deal is all right. So when you hear people talking about trucking, we have like a carrier, which is going to be someone who actually owns the truck. I like to start with an owner, right? Because an owner is someone who doesn't drive the truck. Like me, I would be an owner. I just own a company. I don't drive the truck or none of that stuff. Then you have owner operators. That's the bay. He actually drives. He operates in the business. He does pretty much everything, right? He's an owner operator. Then you have brokers and dispatchers and agents. So when it comes to dispatching, all you're doing is booking loads for owner operators in exchange for a fee. That's it. You ain't got no operating authority. You don't have a bunch of extra stuff that is that goes along with, booking loads if you're a broker and all that stuff. It's literally just booking the loads for an owner operator. Now, you can do dispatching for one person or you can do dispatching for a bunch of people, right? Obviously, if you're doing it for one person, you're limiting your income potential. And the more people that you, or the more owner operators that you are able to actually dispatch for, the more your earning potential. We got that. Let me know in the chat you understand it, because it don't get no more basic than this. Give me a one in the chat if you understand what we're talking about when it comes to dispatching. Keep in mind that as a dispatcher, honey, I'm gonna have to pay attention to my notes here because I'll be talking ahead of myself. Hold up. Keep in mind that, so as a dispatcher, I mentioned like some other options, broker, carrier, and all that stuff. Why would you choose being a dispatcher over the other options? And the reason why is because it really is no risk to it, right? You don't own the authority. Okay, you don't own the operating authority. And when I'm talking about an operating authority, I mean the MC number. I mean the DOT number. Hey, Curtis, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Right? So when you're dispatching, you don't need that. That risk is not on you. So this is why you would choose this particular route over being a carrier or broker. Actually, an agent and a dispatcher, I'm not going to harp on an agent tonight, but these two options carry the least risk because you really are just registering a business, getting a tax ID, get you a business bank account, and then you can start dispatching for someone. You don't have to have that $75,000 bond. Now, pause. Let me explain this one thing to you. I heard probably about a month ago, I was in a clubhouse room, whatever you call them things, and there was a guy in there. He does compliance, and he mentioned that DOT has been in the talks of requiring dispatchers to also have a bond, just like if you are a broker. So I want you guys to think about this, right? Because I keep it all the way real with y'all. I was brokering and stuff and did not have what was required of me. And that's why I ended up stopping, because I found out, I was supposed to have a bond. I was supposed to have an operating authority, right? So the point that I'm making is, as of right now, you're not required to have the bonding. You're not required to have the operating authority. But because there's such an influx of dispatchers coming on the scene, DOT is changing stuff every day for this industry. So at one point, you may not need these things today, but at one point they could change it up and you do need these things. But that's okay, because we're going to show you, or we are going to figure out a process on how you can prepare for that, okay? So the reason why, again, you choose dispatching over the other options is because it has the least risk. It doesn't really require that much out of you. But it still requires the most important skill in trucking, besides being able to drive, obviously, which is to book the loads. Because you can drive all you want, but if you ain't got no load to run, you ain't making no money. Okay? So, huh?
I just said, say it again.
Yes. So, let's see. Let me see what slide is next. I haven't done slides in a minute. All right. So who's going to be somebody that's good at dispatching? I put on here the gift of gab, and honey, I don't even know if that's how you're supposed to spell that little cliche saying, but we're going to ride with it. So the reason why I say that is because This is all about building relationships. Okay. If you're an asshole, you ain't gonna go too far. You need to be able to turn that on and off, right? Because if a dispatcher at a company, if they don't like you, they will freeze you out so quick. They will give you loads one day and then all of a sudden they will have tried to blackball you, right? So you need to have the gift of gab. You need to be a personable type of individual. You need to be ready to talk to people, you know? You need to be able to communicate, because your owner operator getting loads is dependent upon you and your relationships that you are able to build with these people. So that's why that's at the top. And then the next thing is you need to be organized. And honey, let me tell you something. You want to know who's not organized? Me. Just being honest. I'm not, but I've been doing this long enough that I can get away with it, right? But the goal here is to not just be dispatching for one company, right? Because you want to increase your income opportunities. So if you're going to be dispatching for multiple companies, you can't be playing around. You can't have stuff all over the place. You need to be organized. You need to come up with a system so that you can manage these different companies. Or if you're working for one company and they have multiple trucks, they have multiple contract opportunities, you need to be able to handle that, which brings us to multitasking. This sounds like a daggone, what's those things called when you're looking for a job? Job description, the ad. That's what it sounds like. Need to be a multitasker, need to be organized. Honey, it's real. You got to be all of these things. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful in dispatching. And then you got to be willing to follow up. So like one of my issues is I'm the type of person, if I call you once or twice and you don't answer me, F you, I'm moving on. Like I'm done with you, right? But you can't do that here, because I tell people all the time, you have no idea how many times my phone rings in a day. Just because I don't answer you immediately or hit you back quickly does not mean that I'm not rocking with you. I don't want to work with you. I have a lot going on, right? So you need to be willing to follow up and not be in feelings if you don't get the response that you want the first time. There are people that I have contacted for years to try to get work with them. And 2 years down the road, 3 years later, they finally give me the first load. I don't know if you guys heard what I just said, so I'm going to repeat it. There's been many times over the years where I will reach out to a company to try to run loads with them. I'll fill out the paperwork and we'll call. We will reach out to them and nothing happens, right? Nothing happens. But when we all of a sudden out of nowhere, then we get a phone call like, hey, do you want to do this work? So you got to be willing to follow up and continue to do what you need to do to get people to work with you. All right. So the next one is, how quickly can you make money and how much money can you make? I hate when people ask me this question. I want y'all to stop asking people this question. You know why? Because what one person is able to do, it's going to be completely different for you. You can ask people for the averages of what they're doing. You can ask people all sorts of questions, but that don't mean it's going to be what happens for you. Do your own research. The fact of the matter is with dispatching, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So y'all saw that the first week of February, when I dispatched those 2 trucks, I did $463. The next week, no, $472. The next week, it was $263, right? I'm not doing nothing, y'all. I'm sending a couple text messages a day. As a matter of fact, I counted it up. I sent less than 200 text messages since February 2nd to cover these loads, right? But that's directly reflected in how much money I've made. Pennies, right? Nothing. I mean, $700, however much that adds up to, is nothing to laugh at. Like, if we really being honest, that can make a difference in somebody's life, right? $700 over the course of 2 weeks. However, if I was actually putting forth the effort, I could have done a lot more than that. That was only 2 trucks. on any given day, this same job, we was running what, 10 or more trucks a day?
10, 15.
Easily. So it's how much effort are you going to put into it? How much time are you willing to devote to it? Because while I get phone calls of people offering me work, it didn't start out like that. I was cold calling. I had an assistant cold calling, putting our information out there everywhere. It took years to get to the position where somebody can call me out the blue and offer me 100,000 tons of salt. Okay. So before then, you can make as much money as you want by working your ass off. Now, the question is how quickly. So to give you guys the example, the guy reached out to me on February 2nd. Let me pull up my calendar. The guy reached out to me on February 2nd. That was the first day that he texted me. They ran the load starting that Super Bowl weekend. And the first check that we got from that was on February 12th, I believe. No, excuse me. We didn't turn tickets in that week, February 19th. So the first day that I started working on this, I filled out some paperwork for the owner operator, was on February 2nd, okay? The first check didn't actually come until the 19th. So it was a little bit of time before I got paid for the work that I did, but that's pretty much in any situation, unless you're doing like e-com, right? Most of the times you got to put in a little bit of work and then the pay is going to come. However, that's based off of how you structure your deal, because there's been times, there was a guy that wanted me to run his Amazon relay. And because I knew that he was not a good paymaster, I told him that if I was going to do it, he had to pay me up front. Before I even logged into his relay, he needed to pay me a retainer in order for me to book these loads for him. And then I still wanted pay on the back end, right? So how long it takes you to get paid depends on how you structure and work out the deal with your owner operators. In most cases, your owner operator is not going to pay you until they get paid for that work. So whatever you dispatch, they are going to pay you when they receive that check. So if it's a job that you book and they don't get paid for 30 days, this is the stuff you have to account for and the things that you have to think about. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat, okay? So how quickly is dependent upon you, how you set this up. Because again, even though you are quote unquote working for the owner operator, you are still operating your own business. This is your business. You set up how you want everything to flow, and either they get with it or they don't, okay?